Welcome, everyone. Welcome to our Ginger Desk webinar series. This is our fireside chat with Matt Scott, who's a physiotherapist. So before we get started, if you can please let us know where you're calling in from and what your health discipline is in the chat, that would be wonderful. Let us know what city and state or city and province you're in, and also what your profession is. We'd love to hear from you. So what we're going to be doing today is diving right in. Is diving right in to our conversation with Matt Scott, who is a physiotherapist and a clinic owner, and also a very beloved client here at Ginger Desk. So Matt has an honors Bachelor of Science degree in kinesiology from the University of Calgary. And he also has his master's in science in physiotherapy from the University of Alberta. He's completed advanced coursework in orthopedic physio, dry needling, functional movement screening, vestibular, and concussion rehabilitation. Matt works collaboratively with people of all ages and abilities to achieve their physio goals. Matt uses a combination of exercise-based care, education, and minimal use of passive treatments to assist patients in achieving complete recovery based on their specific goals. Matt is a co-founder of Joint Effort Rehab and Performance right here in BC. He co-founded Joint Effort with his business partner, Patrick Waters, who's an exercise physiologist. And I was asking Matt before our webinar who the patients are that he treats. And we summed it up as he works with cute little old ladies and also 7-foot professional shot putters, all coming through the same door. They have a team of 7 practitioners, including physiotherapy, exercise physiology, registered massage therapy, athletic therapy, and kinesiology. Matt has been a clinic owner for 3 years now and has been in practice in physiotherapy for over 12 years. So welcome, Matt. It's so great to have you here. Thanks for joining us.
Hey, no problem. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. It's great to have you here. I love chatting with practitioners and I love chatting with clinic owners. So we're going to be talking today about business and how you got into physio. And we would love to hear specifically the obstacles and the triumphs you've had in business and in clinic ownership. So let's just jump right in. Now, as we go, folks, if you have questions for Matt, or for me, or there's anything you want us to elaborate on, please just jump into the chat. Let us know. You don't have to use the Q&A today. You can just be right here with us live in the chat. We'd love to hear from you. We'll be about 20 to 30 minutes today, and then you can all get back to building your practices. So Matt, let's just start very basics.
Sure.
Why did you want to become a physio? What inspired you to go into physiotherapy?
So I chose to be a physio because I had a lot of sport injuries when I was a kid growing up. And when I was in grade 8, I think my first big one was I hurt my hamstring. This is the first one where I actually had to go see someone because it was enough of a problem. And here in Kamloops, we had a physio named Holly Eburn, and she did about a bunch of Canada Olympic stuff. And she is kind of a well-known community member who was helpful to a lot of athletes. So we went to see her. She helped me get back on the right track. And then after that, I saw her a few more times through my high school and after high school sports career, and always very helpful and always got me back to doing what I wanted to do. So I just decided that's what I would do myself.
That's awesome. And you found it really young. So you would have been only 13 or 14 at the time.
Yeah, exactly. I kind of walked in on it. It was a bit of a windy road to get there with regards to grades at times and where I was living and all those things, but I arrived where I wanted to be in the end.
I love it. And so I have this just personal question for you on that note. Were your parents really, were they the ones that encouraged you to go to physio at that age? Or did you find her on your own? I know with parents with that demographic of age, sometimes people have different openness to alternative or allied therapies. And I'm just curious how your parents were with
You know what?
encouraging that.
If I don't remember specifically how we went to see her, but my guess is my mom would have talked to her family doctor, and Holly was so well known in town that whether I don't even think I saw my family doctor for the visit, but my mom would have probably just given her a call or something, and she would just said, "Go talk to Holly; she'll straighten you out."
I love it. I love the physician referrals. That's amazing.
Yeah, they're
Awesome.
great.
So this has been your whole life, really?
Yeah, since I was young, for sure. I've always thought about it. I've had an interest in it. Um,
Amazing.
it kind of ties in with training for all your sports, anyways, and learning about muscle groups and exercises. So it's kind of blended in well with my life for the most part.
I love it. That's great. I mean, that's how I've always thought of naturopathic medicine for me. It's just like part of my lifestyle. And it's so handy when you've got these skills, right? You can be the best parent and partner with all
Yeah,
the
exactly.
medical skills in your back pocket. So then in terms of founding Joint Effort, how did you know then as a physio? Because it seems like you probably practiced for around 9 years before launching into clinic ownership yourself. So what was the process and how did you know you wanted to open your own clinic?
From the beginning, I liked the idea of having my own clinic. Again, probably influenced by Holly and her having her own clinic. So going into physio school, that was definitely in my mind to arrive there. When I first started working, I had some great mentors. I worked south of Calgary in Okotoks and in High River. And so for the first 2 or 3 years, I really focused on just learning how to be a clinician. That really takes some time to dial that in. And then after that, they were excellent to give me some opportunities to help out with the practice. I kind of approached them and they let me help out and learn a little bit more about what it takes to run a practice and manage a practice to a small degree and just try it out for a little bit. And then we
Awesome.
moved to Kamloops in 2016. And a colleague of my mentors, they worked together at Olympic Games. A lot of Olympic game connections here, which is kind of funny, even though I haven't been to one or probably won't go to one myself. But um, so then I was referred to a place in Kamloops to work at Sage, which has been a great clinic in town for a solid let's say 20 plus years now.
Mhm.
And Ross Outerbridge, the clinic owner there, same thing. Once I got in there and established myself, was very generous to allow me to take on some extra roles within the clinic and try that out. So I helped with
Awesome.
hiring the admin team and a number of other things and interviewing people and probably a bit larger role in managing a practice than I had before. I was lucky enough to go through switching from paper charting to digital charting. So going
Wow,
from
that's a
that
big deal.
to the to Jane,
Hmm.
which I think that'd be more impressive 10 years before that when they first had the software out and people were making the switch. It seemed like a lot of work. Jane made that
Yeah.
so easy in 2019 when we did that. And then we
Yeah.
had COVID just shortly after. So it was the best timing in the world for that.
Oh, isn't that incredible? So you then switched to EMR
Yeah.
and that was the year you started your clinic or was just after that?
I was still at Sage, the old clinic,
Okay.
switched it over to Jane onto EMR. And then that spring, COVID hits, we all have to be remote and we have an EMR that supports that.
Amazing.
Yeah,
Okay.
it couldn't have timed out any better.
And you couldn't, I mean, typically people don't, practitioners don't get that kind of experience when they're working in other people's clinics. That's
No.
really cool that you had that experience. And I think for anyone who's listening or watching us right now, like for new grads, my suggestion is that they do get their treatment knowledge up to par before launching into the business side of things. And it sounds like that's exactly what you did. Like you
Yeah.
figured out your presence with patients and how to be a great physio first.
Yeah, I would strongly agree with that for sure. Otherwise, that's quite a bit to manage for one person, I feel. Some people do it. I mean, you probably know people who did it too, and
Yeah.
it's very impressive. But for me, that would have been quite a bit.
Yeah, for me too. I agree. Like I worked for 3 years before opening my own clinic personally. And I think it's so nice to figure out how to actually do the job.
Yeah.
How to be the practitioner first and figure out how to treat patients really, really well with confidence. Because yeah, running the business side is a whole other job. It's like it's a really big and it's a completely different energy. So that's cool that you had that exposure before you even went out on your own.
Yeah, it really helped me out for sure.
That's amazing. So how equipped did you feel when you launched your own clinic?
I think I felt very equipped. And then it's kind of a two-stage thing because when I left, it was myself and there's an admin person who ironically helped me in the past who did remote work for me. So when I first
Okay.
went on my own, I was in a tiny little office I had my business partner, myself, and a remote admin service. And then I had Smile Dog to start with for my call answering service.
Great.
And off I went. My previous clinic was very friendly. I was very transparent about my goals to start my own practice. So they allowed me to take patient records with me. We kind of negotiated all of those things. So some patients came with me and it went from there. So it felt like it was going to be easy. And I would say it was in the beginning,
Hmm.
but it was such a small operation. I think that's why. And then
Yes.
I feel like the last year and a bit, as we've grown a lot more, now I'm getting a lot better understanding of those extra challenges of being a practice owner now and all these extras. So I think I just had such a little thing going before it wasn't too bad.
Well, that makes sense, right? And now you're operating more at scale, certainly, right? It
Hmm.
was just you before, and now you've got these 7 practitioners depending on you, which leads me to my next question, too, is what helped you get so busy in practice? How did you do it? Because a lot of practitioners struggle with finding their first patients and maintaining a consistent caseload, especially with seasonality being a thing for health practitioners. So what are your secrets, Matt? How did you get so
Yeah,
busy?
I wish I had better secrets to share than the ones I will share because they aren't like the most helpful tips in the world. Number one, my previous clinic was helpful, so they did share patients with me. So I had a bit of a soft start. I was able to communicate that with those patients. They had the option to go with me or stay at the clinic they were at. That was excellent. The clinic I was leaving didn't have the capacity to support them anyways, too. So it's kind of a natural fit for them to come with me if they wanted to. So that was a good number one, which not all people have a chance to. Number two, Kamloops specifically has a nice busy market for physiotherapy. So as long as you can survive the initial costs of getting started, I think you're going to do okay here. So
Right.
that was a big help as well. You know, it's not going to happen in one day, but you're going to get busy over time. And then in the long run, I've made some good connections, as you said, with physicians and orthopedic specialists in town, and that's been a great source of patients for us.
That's awesome. And I think what I'm hearing is that the common thread here is that you just work in the highest of integrity, Matt. Like you had an awesome relationship with the first clinic you worked with. And now you've got an amazing network because you've just been a really great guy to work with. And I can attest to this. So, but I think that's it. I don't think it's like a magic. It's like it's not something that people can't actually take home. I think this is helpful. It's like be a great person that other people want to work with, and good things will come to you.
Yeah, you definitely want to take care of the people you're working with at the time.
Yeah.
Don't burn any bridges on the way out because you never know what'll happen.
And I happen to know that you are really great to work with, and our team really feels highly respected from you. And so I know that that's how you treat your team at your clinic. I know that personally, and it goes such a long way, doesn't it?
It's very important because sometimes you have to ask people to do a little extra for you,
That's
and it's
right.
hard to get that favor when you're not treating them well otherwise.
That's well said. I love that.
Yeah.
We have some folks who just joined us. So just so you know, as we're going, we're talking to Matt Scott here about clinic ownership and practice, life and business. If you have questions, please let us know in the chat. And please hop into the chat and let us know where you're calling from and your discipline as well. And we're here to talk specifically to you if you have any specific questions. So Matt, how did you decide to work with a Ginger Desk VA? Now, I actually didn't know that you had this remote team before, so that's really cool that you had that experience already. How did you know that you needed admin support, and what made you turn to remote admin, both then and then now with Ginger Desk?
So then it was a matter of scale. So when I first started my own business, I wanted basically I call it like a hermit crab model. Start with a little shell, and then as you get big enough, you go into a bigger shell, and then go into a bigger
Amazing.
shell. Yeah. so
I love
so
that.
I started with a nice affordable space. I had myself in the space. I had my business partner in the space. And then with the admin person I'd experienced with in the past for work safe billing and some of the more complex stuff, she had moved actually out of town to somewhere an hour away and was able to support me remotely. So that was a natural fit there. And then the way
Yep.
Jane works, between the debit machine and the software, it's very easy to take payments for point of sale stuff. I think once you get used to it, it's less than 30 seconds to handle those transactions.
Yeah, it's quite quick.
Yeah, so I got really comfortable with that setup. That's kind of what I was born into, I guess. So after that, I realized you can have a practice without somebody at the front desk every day. You
Excellent.
can, then you're the person greeting the person at the door. Everybody can probably attest to this. Sometimes the admin person will speak to somebody on the phone and that person doesn't give the admin person the best version of themselves.
Yeah,
They're a little, or at the door or whatever, they're having a tough day. But for some reason, when you're their practitioner, they don't really give that to you the same way. So
so
you kind of
true.
avoid some of those little conflicts at the front, especially where, and
What a great tip. So
yeah,
you think by greeting, this is so fascinating to me. So you think by the practitioner greeting the patient, it actually minimizes some of the obstacles
it
between
can for
front
sure.
desk and patient,
Yeah, you aren't stuck waiting. You aren't stressed out. All those types of things. You aren't. Maybe those two people just clash for whatever reason because that can happen. So none
right?
of that really happens now because your practitioner just greets you.
That's so wonderful. And you've just set up systems to make sure that that's seamless, right? It's not
Yes, exactly.
haphazard. It's the admin does this remotely and the in-person practitioners do this.
Do these things. Yeah, every now and then somebody's gonna slip through the cracks, but I think that happens in any setup, anyways.
Well, it sure does. And I think it takes documenting the systems and making sure everybody's super clear in the delineation of responsibilities. And I know that you've been so good about that. Like you always want to make sure, okay, hold on, like what are we doing versus what are you doing and what's the best move here for the patient?
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. What's everyone's job?
That's awesome. And so, how now, in terms of like your experience with Ginger Desk, so tell us a little bit about how was that moving from your previous setup to working with us?
So the Ginger Desk came up because it was just a problem of scale. I added my first physio with us, and she was very busy, so everything scaled up past what she was able to handle because she had another job, and she was just doing this in the evenings on the weekends for a little bit of extra work. So I didn't have the scale anymore. So I went to. Do you know of TCVS? Have you heard of them? They were a
There
little
another virtual
VA
assistant?
service out of Vancouver as well. So
Yeah.
Jane had a list of VA services. I
Yep.
just started on the top and went my way down. And they
Great.
they actually ended up recommending you guys because they thought you guys might be able to handle WorkSafe billing, and that was a large
Yes.
part of what I needed help with.
Okay.
It turned out you guys had not done much WorkSafe billing yet, but you were the most willing to pick it up and work with it and try it out. So we kind of
Yeah.
just tried each other out. So you met
That's
all my
right.
other needs. You're willing to try the WorkSafe billing, which is important for my clinic specifically. So it was a great
Yeah.
fit.
That's awesome. That's wonderful to hear. And so we started with you, Matt, for everybody listening. We started with joint effort doing a lot of Canadian insurance billing because we have some US folks who are here doing Canadian insurance billing, specifically in British Columbia, and general VA support remotely for your very busy practice, Matt. And then we moved on to supporting your phones. And that's a newer product that we've just launched. We now offer live phone answering. And Matt and his practice were one of our very first clients who supported our initial launch. So, Matt, how do you integrate Ginger Phone into your practice? How does that work? And what advantages do you find of having a remote team answering your phones for you?
So Ginger Phone is your person covering the phones. At the bigger clinic I worked at, which had 3 admin people helping us out, and they were on a similar scale ish. So that's the type of admin support we need. We needed somebody at the front who basically checked people in, answered the phone, and did some little tasks like that. Somebody, a dedicated biller in the back, and then a third person who was part time with the person in the front, so that they could kind of switch off back and forth and cover more of the day. So having Ginger Phone, you get your coverage throughout your day. It's shared between their team that covers it, but you are also, it's just a few VAs who help you. It's not a team of 100 anonymous people or anything like that.
Yes, it's not a call center, that's for sure.
Yeah, and
No,
adding
it's not.
Ginger Phone, I used Smile Dog before. We still use them for some after hours stuff and some weekend things as you guys continue to grow your hours and your support.
That's great.
And the advantage to Ginger Phone is that they can communicate more directly with my Ginger VAs They also have a system in place for how they like to handle communication. Like they use the tasks quite often or the notes quite often. So
That's
it's
right.
natural for them to communicate the same way to each other.
Yeah,
And then from the client perspective, it feels more like they are all your admin team. So the trouble with what I've put together and doing it this way is if you have just a Ginger Desk VA and someone answering your phones and someone else doing another job,
yeah,
depending on who that person is, they're talking to one of those three people. And if they talk to another one of those three people who are helping you, and they don't communicate with each other, it feels like you're calling a different clinic each time, or you're
that's
talking to a
right.
completely different place. So there's some
Yes,
things that have to happen behind the scenes so that you can keep the feel right of having an in-house admin team, which I
that's
think people
right.
still kind of matters a little bit.
It does matter, right? And it's integration. It's making sure that these departments feel aligned and integrated. And there has to be systems set up for them to cross communicate because so often, right, someone will call your phone and they'll be wanting maybe to talk about something practitioner related, or maybe it's an issue with billing where they need to talk to somebody who has more in-depth knowledge. And so they have to have a great system for communicating with the billing team. Otherwise, the poor patient is going to
They
suffer.
get stuck in a loop. Yeah. So
They
you
do.
call, they tell you they'll get right back to you. Then the other person calls and then they miss, and then the person wanting to speak to them misses the call.
Oh,
And yeah, it
goodness.
can turn into a bit of a loop where with Ginger, they can just send those notes forward. If they call again, it's right on their file and they give the answer the billing person wants them to know, or they can request that additional information that was needed or whatever you need.
Yes, exactly. I love it. I'm so happy that you brought that up because it's interesting even just to hear your experience as a client of ours that you find you don't have so much the back and forth anymore because
Yeah,
they're so much more integrated. And that's the benefit, truly.
it is. Yeah,
Um,
that's a big help.
that's awesome, Matt. Thank you. So what I was going to ask you, what advantages have you seen in having, I mean, you've had so many experiences of different remote teams now. What are the advantages that you found of having a remote team versus in person?
What I like about the remote team is while I had or assisted with the non-remote team, there's naturally some turnover there. Quite a bit of the clinic I was at, I would say every 9 months to a year and a half, somebody would change the position for a variety of reasons. So you're
Yes,
going back, you're retraining them. Um, you are having to refresh yourself on some of these things that you're retraining them on,
that's
and then
right.
or the person leaving is training the person coming in. And once you get to 3 or 4 versions of that, the original message can change by the time it gets to
Yes.
the last person.
Right.
So
It's no
yeah,
longer coming from you. It's now getting like telephone game down
that's exactly
and
it. Yeah,
delivered.
it's a little different by the end of it there. So what I liked about Ginger with reading with them is that you guys have a training system people have to go through, and you guys can detail that all over your website and everywhere. And then the other thing is you take care of the replacement part of it, or sick time,
That's right.
or any other reason why your VA might not be around for vacation, whatever it is.
And so, and with that, because exactly that's what we promised, right? It's no downtime. We've got you covered. And once you hire Ginger Desk, you don't have to hire again because turnover is such a big issue in
Yeah,
clinics. It's interesting you're saying 9 months to a year and a half because that's that's actually like one of the best case scenarios. I've heard so many horror stories of like 6 staff in 6 months time.
I could see that for sure. It's just a lottery sometimes. So.
It is. It is a lottery, totally, because humans, this stuff happens. And so how did your practitioners specifically, because you've got a big team, I consider your clinic one of the larger clinics, certainly that we support with 7 practitioners. That's a big team. How did they respond to having a remote team?
It worked out pretty good because they all came on one by one. I think it would have been more of a challenge to take an established practice and completely flip it in one day. But,
Yes.
but but thinking about the practice I worked at, I definitely could see starting with the day-to-day billing and kind of growing from there as people got comfortable. But the
Yeah.
practitioners working in the system I have overall, I think they're comfortable with it. They sometimes you're just used to that person sitting at the front there, so you can look at them and ask them a question. But as they got used to use, like we use Slack for communication within the team because of its requirements for privacy and safety. I'm not going to say that properly, but everybody knows what I mean by
Yeah.
when I'm saying that. It's actually kind of nice that you can just type a quick message, you can send a quick email. Everything on the positive side is recorded, so you can keep track of where tasks are at and you can revisit those tasks. So
Yes.
in some ways, it's a little more organized when things are working really well.
That's right. And I love that you brought that up because that's what it takes, right? It takes finding the system for communication that works for you and that's efficient. And then you get everybody on board so they're all following the same system. And as soon as things get bespoke, or there's like, well, this practitioner uses Slack, but this one uses Jane Tasks and this one uses email, stuff
Yeah,
will
it's not
fall through
good.
the cracks. And you've been so good at like adhering to that and making that a cross clinic system. So that's well done. That's awesome. And I'm happy that they've been so open to the idea of remote support. And I think once that practitioners start to see how much support it provides, they do embrace it. It's just
Yeah,
it is still an unknown for people when they're
it
first
is.
launching in.
And even patients, when it's going smoothly, they like the experience. They walk in, they grab a seat, they have their appointment, and they leave, and things just kind of magically happen in the cloud, and they get a receipt.
That's right.
Yeah,
They
it
get all
feels
their
like
needs
people always
covered.
like, "Where do I go to pay? What do I do?" Nothing, and and then after that, they're used to it. It's very time efficient. There's no
Yeah.
waiting around at the front afterwards. It's great.
Exactly, right? Like their time is so valuable and they don't want to wait. They don't want to waste their time. That's awesome. So now in terms of business, entrepreneurship, I mean, you came out of this as a clinician who learned from your amazing previous clinic owner who was so clearly generous with their time. How did you learn about business and entrepreneurship enough to run a successful clinic?
So you're right. Part of that came from just experience within the clinics I was at before, and the willingness of those people to share some of that knowledge. And then a whole bunch of it came from my wife. She's an accountant. So again, that's like another one of those like secrets that's useless to most people unless you plan on having a partner who is an accountant. But it was a big help because they're experts on business. So
I love it.
I had kind of napkin math and big dreams for how this would work. And then she was great at throwing that in an Excel spreadsheet and showing me what it might actually really look like when I try and do what I want to do.
That's amazing. I mean, and I'll add to that and share that when I first launched my first clinic, or no, my second clinic, I hired a business plan writer. And because I didn't have a wife who, or husband, who was an accountant. But so I can see that that would be so handy because you have to have those numbers. You've got to have those projections so that you can go to the bank and, and also make claims to your associates on what you're about to build. So that's amazing that you had that like in literally in-house support to launch
Oh
those
yeah, it's
projections.
fantastic. Yeah.
That's awesome. So yeah, so if you don't have a partner, you can still outsource, right?
Yep,
That's the
they're
take home
out there.
message.
Yep,
They're
they'll
out
happily
there.
see you.
So Matt, if a practitioner wants to open a clinic, what are the top three pieces of advice that you would lend to a practitioner who wants to one day launch their own clinic?
My top three.
Top three pieces of advice.
Yep.
Yeah.
So I would say number one is I'm going to go back to the accountant. They're really important. They're like the engineers of business. They understand all the moving parts. They understand your numbers. They can show you what that would look like, how that's going to work, and maybe what changes you might need to make to your plan to make sure it's a sustainable plan. I think everybody goes into business hoping it succeeds, right? So those guys get you off to a good start. Number
Yeah, that's
two
great advice.
is a lawyer. Have a business
Yes.
partner, and having a business partner has so many benefits. It's nice to step away for a week on vacation and know someone else is covering things while you're gone, sharing a lot of tasks and work. So there's a lot of upsides.
Yeah.
But with the lawyer, we have a shareholders agreement. We amend that shareholders agreement if things changed in our working relationship. And then that way, when all else fails, you have something to go by. And then the lawyers
Amazing.
also help you set up your corporation, and your accountant works with that. And there's tax planning. It kind of goes on forever after that.
Yeah.
So
And I will
those people set it all up.
the other benefit of the lawyer is employee agreements,
Yep, that's
right?
true. Yes, we end lease agreements and all those things.
Yes. All those things. Because I find practitioners, you see in these Facebook groups, often they'll be like, hey, do you have an agreement that I could borrow? I need an agreement for this. I'm bringing on an RMT. Does anyone have an RMT agreement? And I
Yeah,
always think, hold on. Like you need to get your own active legal agreement because who knows what Joe Blow down the street put in theirs. And if you want it to be upheld in court, if should something ever go sideways, it's like worth its weight in gold to have that drafted by a lawyer.
that's exactly it. I mean, us as professionals, if we're seeing a patient, we don't just grab another professional's work and
Right.
give it to that patient. There's some due diligence we do ourselves in reviewing what that is a naturopath, right? Reviewing what they've been given and deciding on your own because now it's your responsibility what to do with them. So
That's
it's the
right.
same with their employee agreements or lease agreements, all those things. They have to make sure they're a good fit for us. Those, I think, on the scale of a cost to get a business going, those aren't always your biggest costs, and those will be your biggest savings later if things go wrong for you. Because
Oh,
number one,
that's so true.
I don't think things will go wrong less often if those people are there to start with. And number two, if they do go wrong, they mitigate how hurtful that could be to your business as well.
Oh my gosh, that's incredible advice, Matt. Thank you for saying that so clearly. You're right. And even just having that stuff in place for a point of discussion is so
Yes.
helpful, isn't it?
Yep.
And then it prevents stuff from happening just because you had it in place from the beginning. I think that's amazing. Do you have a third piece of advice?
Lawyer, accountant, and last is a strong admin team. So when I left, I was
Oh,
lucky to have some good admin help from the person I had experience with before and went out on my own. And she supported me early on. She taught me some things as I handled the day-to-day point of sale stuff by myself. And as it's grown, you really can't get anywhere without a good admin team. So those are my
well
three main
said.
ones. I mean, you can do the marketing, you can do all kinds of other community outreach things. There's this, it's endless. But at the end of the day, I feel like if you don't have that infrastructure in place, and to me, those three pieces represent a large part of your business infrastructure.
Thank you. That's so well said, Matt, because that's what makes you scalable, right? Is you've got the processes in place that you can now just know that the foundations are set and now you can grow as much as you want.
Yeah, and I guess
Awesome.
that's not to make this all about ginger. I mean, a little bit it is, but is that you guys can scale up with a business. So I
That's
can
right.
start with a tiny little bit of support, which I did, and since then the support has continued to grow as I grow. And in the unfortunate event I shrink a little bit, you guys shrink with me, which is really nice.
Exactly. We can add or reduce levels of support based on your growth. Thanks. Thank you, Matt. So awesome. Thanks so much for sharing. For those of you who have questions, please jump into the chat and share with us. This has been such a great conversation. It's so awesome to hear about your growth and where you came from and how far you've come in your success. Now, before we go, while folks are asking questions, I want to offer everyone who registered for this webinar, whether you're here live with us or you're watching this recording, we have this one-time offer for you. It's 20% off your first 3 months with Ginger Desk. This is the QR code that you can scan so that you can go book your discovery call. Make sure you mention that you were a registrant on this webinar specifically, because this is just a webinar offer only for you. So thank you so much. Thanks everyone for joining us, for watching. I hoped you learned some valuable insight on what it takes to go from practitioner to stellar clinic owner. And thanks for being here with us. Thanks everyone. Take care. Bye.